This is bottle 6. This is a large 5-liter bottle, obviously with an integrated handle. It's very heavy and it's a large size. So this would be in the laundry detergent category. So the design objectives were to keep this shape as simple as possible and as clean as possible. The functionality of a bottle like this, like we all know, is the rotating. So that's why I did this circular type of graphic. So when it rolls, we're not changing the orientation of our PDP. It'll always be round because when it rolls, it's always a circle. And then encouraging this rolling effect by having these very large radiuses on the bottom. So you can literally just sort of roll it forward and have an integrated foot area instead of trying to blend that into the side. So having this functionality turn like this. So we can have this nice, clean position when it's rolled on its side. And then the graphics, yes, the graphics would have to be addressed, whether they're on an angle to start with and they continue to remain on an angle as we turn it, or depending on how those graphics would be oriented in both directions. But it's a pretty nice design. It works pretty well because it's very difficult to integrate all of these features in the one bottle because a lot of things have to happen. Let me just bring this around again. So there's like 3 main things that have to happen. Obviously, we got to maintain this volume, which is hard enough to do as it is. We have our proportions I got from the category. So I'm following these proportions, roughly 9 or so inches wide, about 11 inches high, and about 5 inches deep, to try to get that to fit because it's a typical size for this 5-liter bottle. So what we have to think about is the handle. The handle has to be grippable. It can't be a very large, wide, deep handle like that integrates with the rest of the bottle. And then we have the area for the measuring cup, that plateau there where the finish is underneath, and then we have the pump. I'm not going to design that part. I'm just need to allow space for that. And then we have our overall width, our 5-inch width. So all of these things are moving targets and they're kind of opposing one another because one part needs to be thin, other part needs to be wide. So it's kind of difficult to get all that to work. So this particular approach, I'm building it in 2 sections. I have this center round kind of drum area, and then I have this whole outer frame, which is a different part. By separating the components this way, I can address some of these dimensions individually. Like I'm going to address the handle size and the finish area in one part, and then I can adjust this drum size to make sure I hit my volume. So working with these 2 parts makes it a little easier to work with. So of course I'm starting off. I have my construction lines to create my overall shape. So I have that laid out over here. So here I'm starting just to do all the, like I said, I'm trying to maintain the simplicity by using these nice generous radiuses. So I started off with the handle. From the front view, I wanted this round open handle. So I drew the outline of that circle, and then I drew the inside line for the clearance. So about how big that might be, 3/4 to an inch or so, and I'm going to do some radiusing to make that fit. So I started with that. And then to maintain this circular theme that I have, I just brought down that exact same diameter on these 2 bottom corners to make those bottom corners the same diameter. And then I have my large circle in the center, which is going to represent that drum area in the middle, which will actually be a separate part. So that's just the beginning of the layout. So with that in mind, I go back to my 3D part after I have the 2D part laid out. And I know I'm working with that handle. So there's the handle over there on the left. So I'm trying to make this face for this inside part. So I'm going to loft that like I've done many other bottles, and I'm going to angle in that top one. You can see the top area here. I brought this corner, this upper right corner, in very tight. So that's over by where the handle is. That's how I'm getting this slim area for the handle. And then on the top left, that width, I'm trying to maintain enough so I can get my measuring cup in there. So that's where that comes in. And the rest of them are just straight. So by lofting that, I can get this front surface. So again, selecting these in order. Takes a while, obviously it takes a while to get these into position. So a little bit of trial and error, and I go back and forth and trying to get this lofted surface. And I went to my tangent loft, and then that's what created that first surface. So I have that coming up nice and straight at the bottom. I don't have to worry about this being a ruled surface because I'm not putting a label on this. I'm putting a label on this drum area in the section. So this is just about hitting these dimensions. I'm making it narrower at the bottom than the drum area, than the maximum width. And that allows me to hit these other dimensions at the top much easier. So once I have that, then from my line work, I just brought over my profile and I just trimmed this swept surface with my profile. So I got my radiuses at the bottom, left this corner square, and then the radius for my handle. And then by taking that and mirroring it over to the back, I can start to see where my handle area is going to be. So it looks pretty good. I can go in there and I can measure that. And I'm getting down to a nice dimension that would work. And of course, I also cut the hole in the center. So once I have all those parts together, then it's a matter of doing the lofting to get our sides. So if we look at it from the front view, I need to create that center line. So that's this extra line. So I have the center part, which is the trimmed loft surface. And I just took my center line and I created a 2D wall to bring that out. I probably brought that out, I don't know, 180 thousandths, maybe 200 thousandths, a little less than a quarter of an inch. So I can get that nice clearance. So when I loft my surfaces, that gives me my draft angles and those soft edges, which are all here. I took the front surface off so we could see those. So again, the lofting of these is selecting these segments, selecting that one from the front surface, that one, and then the one in the back, and then I just loft all these. I loft them individually so I can keep track of how they're doing. So there's that lofted surface. Oops, that's not what we wanted. Why did it do that? We just need these three. I think I accidentally selected another surface down there. Keeps going to the back. Okay, so it's those three edges that give me that that lofted surface that we have here. And then obviously we do all the rest of them, get all the sides of the bottle. So we have all those lofted surfaces and we have the front and the back. So if we bring those all together and we union them together, we have that center part. So that would be completed. So the next part is this drum area in the center. So again, I'm lofting the front. Now this is a ruled surface. So I created this surface in the front just from two sources, one at the bottom, one at the top, and then lofted that straight up. So now I have a ruled surface that I can put a paper label on. So all I have to do is trim that and bring that around. So this is a relatively straightforward part. So I'm going to trim with line. So I'm going to select the surface and I'm going to use the smaller inside edge and I'm going to loft that. I'm going to take that part, which I have in position out front here like this, and I'll just mirror that to the back. One copy. And then there are my three sources. So I can just select these directly or just select the segments. And that'll keep my face in the front and the back. And then all I have to do is stitch it. So I select those three. And again, this is giving me that draft angle because this part of this drum will be exposed underneath the handle. I'm using that for the bottom of the handle. So then I loft those. Okay, did go to the front. So that would go to the front and the back and stitch them all together. And then that would give me the center part. So those are my two pieces that I have built. So again, I'm going to leave all these here. So I have all my steps nicely organized in case I need to go back and make some adjustments. So on another layer, I brought my two parts together. And this is where I'm going to finish up the object. So here are my two pieces on the side. I have the drum part and this other part in the section. So let me just ghost this. You can see, so I have my handle, I have the complete circle for the handle, but I made it large enough because I knew I was going to bring in this round drum to create the bottom of the section. I like the way that part comes through. So it's almost like this handle area is like a cradle holding the center of that part. Just kind of a visually interesting component. So by doing that, I can make some last minute adjustments. Let's say if I'm slightly low or slightly high on my volume, I could just change the proportions of this drum part slightly. I can make it a little slimmer. I can make it a little bit smaller, slightly larger. I can do some fine tuning without going all the way back to change all my, because this other part worked out really well. So that's just a little feature of doing this. So with the two parts together, all we have to do is union these. These are both solids. So if I select both of them and I union that, and this is where I can get a rough idea on volumetrics. So now this is all one part, and I can check that, check the volume on that to see how that's going to go. So the next step is this whole rendering, the radiusing sequence. This can vary. I'm not going to just click on the whole thing and say, render radius it all at once. I kind of did it in stages. I believe I did this center one, and the handle probably is the most important, because I'm going to, I need to make that nice and soft. So it looks like I have a pretty generous radius in there. And I would do this on both sides, front and back. But let's just start with this front piece. It's probably 1/2 inch, but let's see, that clears. That looks a little deep. It's hard to tell what I did last time together. It might be 3/8. Maybe it is 1/2 inch. So I'm going to grab the, select the front and the back and do this all at the same time, because I am going to need to have that done back here. So let's try, let's go back. I think I did the 1/2 inch. That's nice and generous inside there. It kind of reduces a lot of that mass. So that handle would feel very nice. Yeah, looks good. Okay, so I am going to do the back of the handle, but this next sequence here, I can select segment sequence. And you can see this is going all the way around. It's going around by the drum, inside, and to the other side all at once. This radius is a little less critical because our hand is not grabbing it, but I think I did a 1/4 inch. And now that'll fill in inside that hand. There it is. That's nice. So that radius, very nice. Yes, that's what I used. Yeah, it's 1/4 inch. So we can see how this starts to come together. The rest of these radius, I think I did a relatively big radius over here by the finish, which is probably not the best idea because we want all the fluid to drain out. So by putting this relatively large radius there, it makes it a little challenging to get that all to come out. But even at best, you still have to tip these forward slightly to get the all the fluid out. See, I might have done 0.5. Yeah, that's about right. Also, the radiuses prevent dents and things like that. So it is a good idea to do that. So this is just about done for this rendering sequence. So again, I can do select all of these at once and in the back. And it looks like that might be a 1/4 inch also. So I have that on 1/2. Oh, I didn't do this inside. You can see this inside radius by the handle. I think I did that. See, I have a sharp edge in there, and over there I did that. I think I did that at a 1/2 inch also. But this is looking pretty good. And then, of course, the front edge of the drum area. And I showed it with the full label area. My label would have to have a little bit of tolerance, so I probably have to bring that in a little bit. Another little detail is I put this like this bar, this molded piece. Now I have no draft angle on that. I have that straight across. The reason I did that is because that's going to provide some stability. It's like a foot. Now to have this local area with no draft, that should be relatively easy to get out of the mold. I don't want to do the entire side of the bottle, have draft angle on the rest of the bottle. So that should come out nice. But I made a very deliberate part there instead of trying to integrate that into the bottle. A lot of these large bottles, we get all these swooping edges and they're trying to integrate all these kind of stability issues. I took the point of view, I'm going to make it very overt. I'm going to put this piece here. Now put it right on center in the circle, so it actually looks like it's pretty well thought out. So I think that turned out nice, having that right in position there. Yeah, so that's it. So I think this stayed pretty simple, and it worked, and I hit my volume. So when I select this, I have I don't know, I think like 5¼ liters. So I have some space for wall thicknesses and also for some headspace. So one little detail I didn't mention is this little vent knob. Most of these large bottles have a full screw cap over on the right-hand side, on the opposite side of the cap. Because what they try to do is get the handle and the measuring cup and this other vent cap all to line up. Because these bottles are extremely heavy. So when they put these in the cartons, the corrugated cartons, and they put them on pallet packs and they stack them, they could be stacked 5 or 6 cartons high. The bottles at the bottom really have to hold up. They cannot break down with all the weight on top of them. So they try to, especially with these big heavy bottles, they make this line. Smaller bottles, they can get away with that. They use some fillers and then they're not as heavy. So they don't necessarily need to make the handle line up with the cap. But in these large bottles, it's imperative that they do that. So that's why we have our handle protruding up and lining up in the measuring cup. And then I have this little vent cap. My little vent cap is much more insignificant because all you really need is a hole for air to get into the bottle so it doesn't glug, and then the tap cap will work. So I've seen bottles where they just have like a molded little protrusion there that you cut it. You just cut off the little bump, or you poke a hole in it just to get some air. So it's just one way of simplifying that little feature. It doesn't necessarily need to be a full screw cap, but a lot of those, they do use those for that structural integrity. So I'm using the top of my round handle, which is a relatively thick, beefy handle, so that should be pretty strong. And in this round configuration, it should hold up pretty well. So that'll give us that strength. But I am pushing the boundaries a little bit on some of those technical features to come up with a design that aesthetically is very pleasing and it's very functional. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial.